I'm concerned that we're doing all this talk about transportation, and right now they're like $5 billion in play, and not 1 cent for public transportation, which we need. And I know it's a hard sell, and we are working on alliances across the state, and also more alliances here in the area to put the pressure on legislators. But the thing that concerns me is when you're talking about jobs and things, and that raid on I call it a raid, to put that money into roads and bridges, you get twice the bang for your buck from public transportation things. Is there any way to get your colleagues to hear that? And I asked ALDOT, and maybe you can find out. I asked ALDOT man yesterday at a League of Women Voters meeting downtown on the Beltline and 280, how much money, and to round it off to the nearest billion, has been left on the table in Washington because they just didn't bother to draw down that money. And he said he didn't know. And I don't know, and I know it's a huge amount of money that we could have had for transit that totally skirted. I mean, we need to fix the Constitution too, but we could. There's just not been an effort at all. And we are working on constituents putting pressure on the representatives. But is there any other thing we can do?
Well, let me stop and go back then, since you said like that first. And I'm gonna talk about what you just talked about. We've passed legislation to establish a statewide transportation commission. That's getting those people involved, and you know that already, that you talk about all over the state. Because we tried to go it alone here in Jefferson County, and it just was not enough, you want to call it muscle or push. So now we have a statewide commission. We have co-chairmen of that statewide commission. Representative Rod Scott is the co-chair out of the House. I'm the co-chair out of the Senate for that commission. Yes, we were trying to put together a coalition of people from all over the whole state to try, just as she was mentioned, to address that issue. One of the problems that exist though, is that because of the economy and trying to bring on a whole different revenue source that does not exist now, it's going to have the possibility of taxing people, not taxes, but taking more of their income by increasing whatever it is, whether directly or indirectly. What I think is going to have to happen, I think it's going to have to be something, for instance, like, and I tell you, one of the things that came up years ago was a talk about a fee increase, a very small one, but a fee increase on outdoor advertising, on like those billboards, on outdoor advertising, so that money can be then generated toward mass transit. Because that's what you're going to have to look at if you want to get dedicated source of fund to be able to pull down on that. Because just as she said, you're not going to be able to get it through the gas tax because it's a constitutional amendment it would take, and you're just not going to get 21 votes in the Senate. You're not going to get 2/3 of the vote in the House. Not now. It's just not there. So you got to go a different route to be able to do that. And that was one of the things came up. Just to give you a little history, is that I've been working on this problem since 1994, where Representative Neil Morrison, and you all don't know him as representative, you might know him, but you all don't. But right now he's the president of Wallace Junior College in Hansville. When he was in the legislature, he and I set up what's called a Rural and Urban Interim Committee to try to deal with this problem, to try to come up with the revenue source, and that's how we came up with about the billboards. But it's going to have to be something like that we will have to be able to do that in order to be able to get those funds, to be able to have it dedicated to draw down on the federal funds. So that's something that we'll do. You probably won't get the pool this year. And then I'm just being a realist with all y'all. This election year, you're just not going to get it, the pool. But you probably can get the pool next year, being the first year of the quadrennium, for them to actually look closer and hard at trying to get that revenue. Or the next thing is that you may have to do, just like what I was talking to Mr. Matthews about in the correction, not necessarily increase taking revenue, but put the line item on existing revenues and prioritize it from doing something else with it, that then using it for this purpose. But it still can't be the gas tax, but it can be other forms of revenue that may relate to transportation. That's what's going to have to be done. And like I said, to do that, you probably won't get the votes this year, but you can have a good chance of getting them next year.
Well, I hope too, hearing what's coming out of Washington, that they're going to start tying transit for highway funds because, just a couple $1 million, wow. We could, just in this area, and if they can spend $800 million on, 10 miles of road, we certainly should be able to find a few for bus service. So.
Now, the stimulus money, in closing about that, I tell you this, the stimulus money, when we went to, then I'm going to get right to you, then you. The stimulus money was initially all placed for roads and bridges. Lieutenant Governor Folsom, Ken Ewing, who is the majority leader in the House, and myself, we went to Washington, D.C. last April, along with the people in those same capacities in other states around the country. We were there for 2.5 days or 3 days meeting. The first day we met with the House, and we met with Nancy Pelosi and all Clyburn and all the leaders of the House to discuss these same issues with them. The second day that morning, we met with the leaders in the Senate of the U.S. Congress, and we talk about the same issues. That even we met with all of President Obama's staff, to all of them, everyone is cabinet people, everything, to discuss all these issues that we're talking about the stimulus and about transportation. With that next morning for 2.5 hours, we met with President Obama. And when I said met with President Obama, we had the same conversation that we're having now. It wasn't some speech like you saw on TV and then we clapped and went on. We talked. Everybody raised their hand. He recognized you just like we're doing here, and you get a chance to ask questions. And one of the things that we talked about was that in there, stimulus designate some money for mass transit, not just for road. And he did that. There is money in the stimulus just for mass transit. It's not just a word in there that can only be spent for mass transit. Your municipalities and your other bodies have to go apply and get the money, but the money is there. Some of it is automatically going to come, some is on a competitive basis, but they still got to apply in both areas. So that's what's needed now, is for them to make that application and to seek out those funds. If they don't, like I said up there, other states going to get it if we don't go on after them.
And they is ALDOT, or they is other municipalities?
No, I think municipalities who have transit systems should do it.
Well, and I know there's one grant that I don't know if they've heard yet, the one for the ITP that runs from UAB to the Railroad Reservation Park. That was supposed to be announced in January, where the
that may be some of those funds that they applied for. But it's some more money there. I'm just telling you it is. And they just got to get on the stick and apply for it now in terms of stimulus money. One of the things that was discussed, and I want you to know that, was that allowing some flexibility, and just being discussed. It's not, I don't know if it passed, but allowing some flexibility in that road bond issue on the money that comes to the county and the city to get a little piece of that to be able to do something with mass transit. So I want you to know that's something else that was discussed today. Had some House members to come up to the Senate and pull me to the side, and we started discussing it. I don't know if they can put an amendment on or not with it, but at least I want you to know people are thinking about transit, trying to figure out.